Yo, what's Aguan? It's your boy, Marcus, the Prince of Gardier. Gardier Chef Society represent GS. GCS. GCS for life? It's a little dark in here, but I think we're gonna rock it. You can see me pretty well. It's got some decent lighting on me right now. It's raining outside. There's not too many lights on in here, but I feel like this is good enough. So I wanted to go ahead and kick it to you guys about what's Aguan. Today was a pretty decent shift. I think I started getting smashed, and the dude who was working with me on the station kind of took a break, and I started getting smashed a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. I wasn't checking the ticket times as much. I think I checked it a couple times, and I was like 20 minutes on some shit, but for the most part, it wasn't too bad. Give me a second. But I wanted to go ahead and kick it a little bit and chat a little bit about some things because I was getting smashed, and so I'm just kind of like left and right and left and right, and I got like four things cooking, five things cooking at the same time, and then some things are coming back because they just didn't like the way that it was rushed, and some things it just wasn't as good as it should have been. I had like one thing come back. It was this macaroni and cheese. They wanted chicken in, and I put like one bag of chicken, and they were like, "Where's the chicken?" And so they wanted two bags, I guess. But the chef kind of shitted on me a little bit because what I do with shrimp, is I'll get the skillet really hot with the oil, or I'll get the skillet hot with the oil, and I'll take the shrimp and I'll put them in like a save-a-day, and I'll put seasoning on them, right? And then I'll roll the shrimp in the seasoning, and then I'll put them in the hot oil. And the reason I do that is because I want the seasoning to be evenly distributed on all the shrimp. But I also do that so that there's enough seasoning on it to kind of form that crust. You know what I mean? Because when you're searing it, you sear it for a couple of different reasons. Why? One reason why is because when food sears, it helps to build flavor because that oil is a really good conductor of heat. And the hot pan and direct contact with that hot pan, because it's a pretty high temp. I don't know exactly what the temperature is, but it's pretty high because the smoke point, I think, of canola oil is, gosh, I used to know this off the top of the head. It's I think it's close to like 200 degrees or something, the smoke point of canola oil. So when that oil starts smoking, you're at a good place. But all right, let's say water evaporates at like a little bit over 200 degrees, right? So when you put the shrimp in and you hear that psst, that's the water evaporating. So it's got to be close to 200, maybe a little bit over 200. Probably close to maybe 3. I don't know, something like that. Because they're talking about the Maillard effect, right? The Maillard effect is basically the browning of the proteins and the mixing of those proteins with whatever carbohydrates are there. But the seasoned shrimp, it's got carbs in it, it's got the protein, but it's also covered in seasoning. And when that seasoning hits that oil and hits that hot pan, you're going to see that seasoning kind of form a crust on top of that shrimp. And that's what I want. I don't want it to just cook. I want it to also form that crust, because you're not just building flavor at that point, you're also building texture, right? So the proteins start to coagulate, the carbohydrates start to break down, and they're also mixing together as they cook. The carbohydrates that are becoming more simple are starting to mix with the proteins, and they're building flavor, and that's what the Maillard effect is. Okay, so I do that. And after I'm done mixing the seasoning, because I don't have a save-a-day, so I just do it in my gloves and in my gloved hands, and I throw them in the pan, and then I start doing other things. And it was just because I was in a rush. I totally understand that you're supposed to change out your gloves, and I usually do. It's just, when I have to go left and right at the same time, I don't change out my gloves as often, maybe half as much. So there's a little bit more like cross contamination, but I've never killed anybody in a restaurant. I think I know enough, and I think the food's kept at a low enough temperature and cooked to a high enough temperature that there's not a lot of things to worry about. But I wanted to go ahead and do a video about sanitation, and I guess we could start with the shrimp, right? So with fish, what I think is usually the temperature that we aim for is 145 degrees. So unless it's salmon or something like that, salmon, you can usually eat it at a lower temperature because you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't have the same kind of germs that some other shellfish have. But I guess the critical control point would be to cook it to 145 degrees. Okay, because there's a couple things that you have to be concerned with. One of the big things to be concerned with shellfish is norovirus, and the other big thing is hepatitis A, which are two foodborne illnesses that you get from shellfish that are raised in contaminated water. So let's say they caught the crawfish out in a lake or whatever, wherever they come from, ocean, gulf, I guess, right? River. And there was sewage, raw sewage or something like that in the water. Maybe if there was something dead, I think it usually comes from raw sewage. So that would be when they would become contaminated. And it doesn't matter so much how much you cook it. Norovirus and norovirus and hepatitis A, you can't get rid of them with cooking. It's just contaminated. And so what they tell you to do is to look out for the sources that you get it from. So you want to get a reputable source to buy your crawfish and your shellfish from, so that you don't have to deal with that, or so that's not as big of an issue. Yeah. But in that case, in the case of today, if those shellfish would have happened to have been infected with norovirus or hepatitis A, cross-contamination is a big issue. One of the cool things that we did at a restaurant I worked at like 2 restaurants ago, I guess about a year ago, was they had a really good sanitation program. And so one of the things they would do is after, I don't know, I think it was like 2 hours or something like that, they would change out everything. Like all the tools would be changed. So all your spatulas, all your tongs would be changed out. And the way that they say it works usually, and I have the book right here. I'm trying not to look at it because I don't want to be flipping around in the video, and I don't know exactly what pages it's on. I have like a rough idea because I've been over the book a few times. But I think they say something like, and if I'm wrong, I'm going to check it out and post the correct numbers underneath in the comment section. But I think the way that it goes is you can keep food at room temperature for like a couple of hours. And so if you've got tongs that are covered in food and have been covered in food since the beginning of the shift, you probably need to change those out after a couple of hours to just keep them from... But if it's been touching this and it's been touching that, then you also have to worry about some cross-contamination. But if we're going to start talking about cross-contamination, then for every one thing that I don't know why my nose is so itchy today. I'm not picking my nose. It's just I got to scratch it. I don't know. It's been itching. Maybe it's this mustache. I got to shave this thing off. But if we're going to start talking about cross-contamination, then we're going to have to say... you're going to need a separate pair of tongs for everything that you do, because some people are going to be allergic to shellfish. And so if some people are allergic to shellfish, then you've got a pair of tongs just for shellfish. And if some people are going to be allergic to mushrooms, then you're going to have a separate pair of tongs for everything that's got mushrooms in it. And then, you're going to cook chicken to a different temperature than you're going to cook fish to. So you're going to need a separate pair of tongs just for the chicken. And separate pairs of tongs for the cooked food, and separate pairs of tongs for the foods that are for the foods that are about to get plated. And usually I separate it, but that would be something that you have to to do in order to try to keep everything kind of in order. But the hazard analysis critical control point, the Haccp program, is something that you develop as a way to kind of keep the food just moving in a safe direction. Something that you use to control sanitation during the flow of food. So the way that it usually works is in the flow of food, you just have to identify when and where the points are in the flow of food where things become the most dangerous. So critical control point would be cooking chicken to 165 degrees, but also cooking the ground meat to 165 degrees. So one of the things that we have at this restaurant is we have Italian sausage, and you always want to cook that well done. Same thing if you have lamb, right? Lamb you don't have to cook well done if you have ribs or if you're cutting, pieces off the loin. But when you're cooking lamb sausage, merguez, you want to go ahead and cook it well done just because you have to, because it's ground meat. And when it goes through that machine, it touches all of that machine, but it also touches, the hands of people. It touches the intestines of a pig. When you push it into the sausage, it's touching the air, and the pathogens from the air are getting into the food, and so there's a lot more things to be concerned with when you're talking about ground meat. All right, so I'm gonna do this in 2 videos. This is gonna be the end of the first one, and the second one we'll do as soon as I figure out where the chapter about the Haccp program is, so I can give you a better definition of it and kind of break it down for you guys.